Well, as I said earlier, it's been 2 weeks since the Prime Minister unveiled his first list of national projects. They are as follows: investing and prioritizing Phase 2 of LNG Canada's production in Kitimat, small modular reactors, or SMRs, at Ontario's Darlington nuclear plant, the expansion of the Contrecœur terminal administered by the Port of Montreal, the McLellan Bay Foran copper mine in Saskatchewan, and the expansion of the Red Chris mine in northwestern BC. All projects that the Prime Minister describes as nation builders, capable, he says, of generating billions of dollars in economic activity at a time when Canada's economy is facing grave challenges. So, for their thoughts on all this, we're now joined by former Deputy Prime Minister in the Martin government, Anne McLellan, and former Minister in the Harper government, Lisa Raitt, co-chairs of the Coalition for a Better Future. Hello to both of you.
Hello, Michael. Nice to see you again.
Nice seeing you too. You know, I say it each time you're here. Happy to say it again. The Coalition is concerned with essentially economic growth in this country, because that goes to the individual wealth of Canadians and also the health and wealth of our social programs. So fairly important. And here we are faced with this huge economic challenge south of the border and this national list from the Prime Minister. What do you make of what's been announced so far by this government in terms of investing and prioritizing for building the economy, Lisa?
So they picked the first 5 projects that are going to work. I think setting up the major projects office makes a lot of sense. The Harper government had that as well. And it helps you actually have like a concierge position where people can go through, except this one's a bit different. This one has more power, and it's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to help with regulatory issues. So, for example, the mine and probably LNG2 are going to need a little bit of regulatory help. But the other 3, Contrecœur, OPG, and then the
Darlington.
last, and that's Darlington, and then the last
You're
one.
talking about the Red Chris mine.
Yeah,
2 copper mines.
2 copper mines.
Yes.
The mines and the LNG are going to have regulatory help. The other 2 are going to have government contributions. And that's where this major projects office will come in as well. They're going to do the analysis and help Cabinet understand the decision points along the way, which is always the problem with trying to get to a decision. So they'll map it out, they'll show you what the decision means, when it has to be taken, and then it really is up to Cabinet to say yes or no to the projects going forward.
So talk a bit about that, because basically it's road mapping for Cabinet where the economy needs to go. How effective do you think that's actually going to be, Anne?
I think the announcement of these first 5 projects is going to be a kind of starter, if you like, in terms of letting the business community and more Canadians more generally, but letting the business community know that this government is serious about building things, building more things, and building them faster. And in terms of these particular 5 projects, the Prime Minister has said that they are going to infuse something around $60 billion into the Canadian economy. And that's not insignificant, but it's not nearly enough, as we all know. So I think it's pretty clear this sends a signal. And to Lisa's point, the Prime Minister and the people around him want to have a successful launch, right? They want projects people can look at. They can understand why they were chosen, and they have a really good chance, high chance, of getting over the line. I like the way Minister Hodgson put it in some of the interviews he's done, although we have way too many sports analogies now, Michael. But he talks about the red zone. Those last 10 yards in football, getting the ball into the end zone over those last 10 yards. And I think that's what you were talking about, right? In terms of just getting that little extra push. These projects are generally, some of them further along than others, obviously, but they're moving through the process. But it's the last 10 yards. If you don't get the ball into the end zone, you've lost.
Okay, so
and
that
3 of them are purely private sector, which means it's just the regulatory side. The other 2 are quasi-government, but with investors coming in. So it's a very clear signal to corporate Canada, hey, we're open for business. Let's get moving. And Anne and I talk about that so important within the coalition.
Yeah, well, and I do want to pick up on that point, because we have in the past talked about how, you know, investment in Canada can lag and has been lagging and not meeting what this economy needs. And you hear the Prime Minister talk about these projects and announcing them being a catalytic effect on projects and on the economy, in that it's meant to encourage other investment. Will it in these projects? Will it writ large if the world knows that Canada's open for business, you know, symbolized by these first 5?
Yeah. Well, let's use mining as an example. From conception to permitting and opening of a mine, it can be 16 to 20 years in this country. Showing that we can open 2 mines is a really big deal for people to start thinking about critical minerals. And then you've got the muscle memory of how to actually get these projects done for the Ring of Fire, for lithium mines, for nickel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, as Lisa has mentioned, the Prime Minister has talked about what that next tranche or grouping might look like and what it might involve, and projects that aren't quite as far along, some probably pretty early in the planning process. He's talked about pathways, where there's been discussions between the province of Alberta, the Government of Canada, and the Pathways Alliance for actually a number of years. And right now, we're not sure where those discussions are, but quite clearly the Prime Minister's interested in moving those discussions forward. He talks about decarbonizing the barrel. And if the country wants an oil pipeline, it's going to be mesh together with the decarbonization of the barrel of oil coming out of the oil sands. So, you know, the Prime Minister, I think, is sending, with these first 5, as we've said, clear signal to the business community. But I think this next group, you're going to see a lot more ambition. And, you know, yesterday I was listening, I was at an event here in the city, listening to the chair of Rio Tinto, the second largest mining company in the world, Dominic Barton, talk about ambition. That was actually the name of his comments yesterday, ambition. And he talked about something you and I have talked about for 4 years, which is that the private sector in this country has been too complacent. And they need to step up, and they need to innovate, whether it's AI or other technologies. They need to invest in their own country. And I think what the Prime Minister is doing with both this tranche and the next tranche and whatever comes after that is saying, hey, we're open for business, but we need the private sector in this country to step up and work with us.
Well, you talk to industry, and you know, certainly in your role, Lisa, you talk to a lot of industry leaders. Are you hearing a change in tone, because we're hearing this change of tone in Ottawa now?
It's not a change of tone. It's, I would say, hope, for lack of a better word. They're cautiously hopeful, right? Cautiously optimistic. They want to see the proof that this time the government gets the problem. Because, yes, it's an invitation to the private sector to come in, but I think the government also has to recognize is that both federal and provincial, they get in the way of projects too. And if they pile in too many regulatory processes, if they make it too difficult, that's when companies kind of go, oh, is it really worth the effort? And I'm hoping that showing a good path through the regulatory process in the 2 mines specifically, that's going to really help give the confidence. And of course, I wouldn't be me from Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, but if I didn't mention, you know, Premier Tim Houston and his Wind West project, which is incredibly exciting on the East Coast. It's one of those projects that Anne points out is very nascent, starting at the very beginning, but boy, can it make a difference and bring in lots of investment? 100%.
Well, it's interesting to see the enthusiasm around that. I'm sorry to jump in, because you know, we've only got a couple of minutes left. But you know, so we're seeing the potential of all this. I think that's what you're identifying, the potential, and you know, thumbs up for creating that potential. But we're not yet done. So what are the pitfalls that you would warn this government and provincial governments about as we move forward in this process?
You have to prove that you can execute. The government and the private sector both have to prove that they can execute on these projects. Now, I think if the private sector were here, they would say, yeah, execution, but we need some help in terms of some relief from various kinds of regulations. Maybe, in fact, we need a tax break. Or some other kind of incentive. So I think clearly people are going to be watching, and not only people in this country, money around the world is going to be watching to see if the new office, how it's run, the private sector's inclination to step up, whether this all comes together in a way that says, yeah, there's something real here. There's something that tells us we can take our dollars and put them in Canada and they can actually build something.
Lisa, pitfalls?
Pitfalls. It's along the lines of what Anne's talking about. It's you have to listen to industry when they tell you what's a barrier and not kind of frou-frou it away, saying, well, that's not really a barrier. And I'd also say to industry as well, don't come to the government hoping to stack up the Canada Growth Fund with the Canada Infrastructure Bank, with the Major Projects Office. This isn't about trying to get more money into projects that are questionably profitable. These are real projects that governments want and that companies want to do, but they're just held up because of something in the way. And that's those projects, all of them, I think all of them that are on the list.
Okay, always appreciate the time with the two of you. Always enjoyed the time with the two of you. And Lisa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.